Hello again. Today I'm going to be going through a poem that I wrote during pretty much the darkest times of my depression. I think it was right before my suicide attempt, and it was when everything just felt hopeless and dark. So, I had never really had a care for poetry. I've always had a difficult time following the rhythm and a hard time getting past when a poem doesn't have an obvious rhythm, and more difficult time when it doesn't have a rhyming structure, or if the rhyming structure feels off, if I just can't understand the tempo of the work. So that was something that I've never really attached myself to. Another thing that Dr. Jordan Peterson has made a vast impact on my life is in this area. So in the sequel to the 12 Rules for Life book, there's a chapter called Make One Room in Your Home as Beautiful as Possible, and he reflects on the nature that poetry and art and music have, the way that they impact our psyche and us as people, and the mindset in which someone who creates them, and maybe the way someone understands them. And I felt like a light turned on. It clicked. Now I still am not as... I do have to force myself to... I have to remind myself to get into this mode of understanding that it's not a rational state of mind, not inherently. It's some bridge between the rational and the musical, if that makes any sense. There's something that I guess is analogous to being in the zone. When you're doing something and time is you don't pay attention to what you're doing or what's next. You're just there. That's the space that poetry, art, and music are designed to take you, and it's that space in which an artist tries to illustrate. And that was quite useful to find out, and so I tried to write a poem to illustrate my frustrations, and it was very therapeutic, even though it definitely gave me fuel to hate the world more. So, it has its benefits and its costs. The fact that you can play with something so dark and put words to it is wonderful, but once the words are there, there's a new meaning attached to it. So I was blessed and cursed with the exposure to it at this time. So I'm going to read through this essay, and I have an introduction to it just to kind of give a bit of background to the poem. Then I'll read the poem, and if anything comes to mind on discussing it, then I'll do that. So this is called The Futility of Hope, a poem written during my depression. Poetry, art, music, and nature have a unique way of giving us access to what may best be described as the divine. These mediums bleed outside the realm of rationality, granting us access to speak to our soul in the darkest of times, and can reach places that even our loved ones cannot. Life is a beautiful dame. She carries with her love and hope and dreams. However, she was born alongside an evil twin. Its nature was that of darkness and suffering. Over the last few years, my mental health had rapidly declined, and I could only see the chains of life without any of its flowers. I only saw the evil twin. I found little hope. During this time, I found utility and comfort in poetry, a bridge between word and song. It gave me avenues to portray life's horrors where conversations failed to go. When the devil and his demons were all I could see, poetry provided a melody I could dance to. Being in the company of fallen angels is something I would not wish upon anyone. However, when in Rome, one must learn the best way to survive. Mankind often cringes when an individual names the devil that torments. We take comfort in keeping evils in a nameless fog, asserting that he who must not be named is better than Voldemort. However, a monster without a name is more powerful than he is in reality. The fear created by the willful blindness bestows more power to the beast than he actually has. For this reason, learning to dance with the devil, christening the suffering through poetry, music, painting, or personification in story can be an empowering exercise. It is worth noting that there are also pitfalls with these practices. For myself, an unhealthy romanticism of the darkness sprouted along the empowerment. The temptation to fall in love with one's own suffering was something I found difficult to resist. Below is one of the poems I wrote during some of my darkest moments. I want to preface a few things in advance. The song opens up with a callous attack on the sins of the church. During my journey with depression, my heart towards the church and God oscillated between indifference and bitterness, feelings sprouting from my conclusion that the alleged loving God had failed to show any love towards me. I mention this point out of the obvious pathology. I mention this to point out the obvious pathology, and arguably the weakest part of the poem shows up. While I have yet to find any personal solace in religion or God, I believe the denigration of something that stitches millions of people worldwide together, though it, of course, does do the opposite as well, should have been done more cautiously. It does not take much upstanding character to consider child rape evil. This is why I find the opening to be the weakest part of the exercise. Finally, it is worth knowing, as I have stated in my previous writing, I no longer believe hope should be abandoned. I believe it is essential to survive and must be tended to. I share this poem only with this prologue attached. There are valid reasons to become nihilistic, but its romanticism is poisonous. I believe in life, I believe in love, I believe in hope. Below is a song from a time that I did not. August 14th, 2022. Okay, let's get to the poem. Hope is such a dangerous toy. It fills churches and pews with little girls and young boys, and when all the saints that the building employs put hands on those children, the vicar acts coy. He says with conviction and vigor and joy, it's the hope of salvation. It is still yet to come. Let's be gracious to sinners, remember the depth you rose from. Let's forgive all the saints to which we give our income, for our hope is in he who says he will come, not quite in time to save the kids from the slum. Hope is such a dangerous view. It makes you believe that the false can be true, that the dark could be light, that what's good could be you. It smiles right at you with sunlight and joy. It beckons you saying, come play with this toy. For we never would lie, stop being so coy. We are light, we are love, we are Helen of Troy. Remember your dreams, all you thought life could be. Remember the smiles you had at age 3. When your time with your mother was all you could see, before the pain and the darkness overshadowed your glee. Come listen to us, hold on to our hand. We'll tell you dreams of conquering lands, and say what you wish will be our command. And if what you have asked for sifts right through your hands like oceans of water or deserts of sand, do not deny us, you cannot forsake, for losing your hope is your biggest mistake. So when life becomes what you can no longer take, when your tears start to flow and your heart starts to break, remember you need us every time that you wake, for if you let go, your life is at stake. So listen to us, please hear out our plea, for if you do not, there's no you and no me. Hope is such a dangerous friend, it tries to call you out further till the darkest of ends. Even when you have lost her, she calls out your name and asks you to join her. Things won't be the same. But you cannot forget that you have played out her game. Wherever you walked, you find life made you lame. Your family broke you and shattered your aim. You found bread became tasteless and water the same. You found love and her wonders had died out in flame. You found things that had meaning became things that brought shame. To hope is such a dangerous task. Its roots reach hell's chambers, its wonders don't last. It's like remnants of wood fire, its true nature is ash. It's the knife that digs deepest, it's your father en masse. It's the naive proposal of flowers and grass, but the fields that exist are of thistles and glass. Harsh words from your father and gold turned to brass. where all that you wanted and thought that would last shows its face of what's dead, no longer with us, that which has passed. Hope is such a dangerous dame, don't look in her eyes, Medusa's her name, for stone is all that she brings with her fame, because life is all shadows and fires and flame. Don't look in her eyes, she's all you despise, she's all that you wanted, but in a disguise. She brings you to her knees, or to your knees, or a ladder, where tears fill your eyes, where you hope Newton's discovery will end your demise. So promise me, friend, before we say our goodbyes, pick Barabbas, not Jesus, and choose that she dies. So this was after the suicide attempt. She brings you to your knees or a ladder where tears fill your eyes, where you hope Newton's discovery, gravity, will end your demise. So promise me, friend, before we say our goodbyes. Pick Barabbas and not Jesus, and choose that she, hope, dies. It's dark. It was really dark time. The metaphor of picking Barabbas over Jesus was one I was very proud of. It strikes home. You've got the alleged savior and hope in the world, and the story goes that people chose a thief and murderer over someone like that, and I explicitly said to choose that person over the ideal. Things weren't good. It was, it's very strange writing something like this and then becoming proud of it. There's poems that I've heard from Karl Marx that are borderline satanic, where he illustrates the idea of him being on a throne above everyone, and the lives that have been taken to try out making his ideas manifest in the world. It's a lot. It's a lot of death, and so it's interesting to make something like this and then be proud of it. Because the place that you've got to be proud of words like that is not good, to say the least. It's interesting. I'm trying to just recall or conjure up the emotions of what it felt like to be in that spot, but it feels false and I can't find them. But so I can't really give much to the mindset that I was feeling when I was writing this, other than I do remember a deep bitterness, a deep resentment towards the fact that I did not have the courage to jump off the ladder. I had gotten an extension cord, tied it up to the rafters of the attic, climbed up, and I was a coward, so to speak. I couldn't do it, and that was very annoying. So I tried to lean my weight against the extension cord and hope that I would pass out, and then in the passing out I would passively fall off the ladder and then die. And I couldn't get myself to do that. And when I realized that, so first I was crying, and I had a friend over, and they overheard me crying, and they asked if I was okay, and I said, yeah, I'm good. And I lightened the tone of my voice, and I lied. But when I realized that I wasn't going to have the courage to even get myself to black out and fall unconscious, I unlocked my bedroom door and just began to weep and hope that my friend would hear. I couldn't get off the ladder, and I couldn't jump, and I couldn't become unconscious, and so I just hoped that the friend would check in. And they did, and, in a panic, they helped me get down, and I was weeping, and, the rest is history from there. But I was angry that I couldn't do it. And writing something like this was a way of expressing that. I couldn't get myself to die. I didn't yet have a child, but it was on the way, and there was a level of fear of, whether or not I would be greeted by an almighty telling me that I would burn. So there was an element of that to prevent it. So there was I guess you could say, a fear of God in that moment. But there was another bit. This is something that actually has struck me. I don't quite know why, and I don't know if I'm alone in this, but one of the reasons that I've always hated the idea of dying or even killing myself, even in these dark moments, is the fact that I couldn't stick around to see how people would respond to my death. I couldn't be there to see how my funeral would go and what people would say about me. It's a very interesting arrogance that gets tickled in that moment, because life is so full of suffering and so dark that I don't want to live yet. Because I can't see what they'll say about me, I don't have the courage to do it. It's almost as if this chapter ending without getting to see the final scene of the movie was very demoralizing. You kind of want to know that the time or that the action that you did would produce some form of deep mourning and the encouragements that you wish you could have asked for or heard voluntarily from your friends and your family. You'd get to hear them at the funeral and in the day-to-day conversations, and all of the weeping of the things that they would say, of the potential that I would have had I not done it. There was a deep hole in not getting to experience that. And it's sad to say the least to think about that. That's not all I wanted, because I wasn't only a victim of my life, but there was the call to need someone to tell me who I was so strong that I couldn't kill myself because I'd miss it. That's interesting. I actually never noticed that until this moment, so I don't even know what to make of that. I know I'm behind socially when it comes to being socially aware of people. I often tell jokes that make people uncomfortable, and I'm having a good time, and I miss a lot in the facial expressions of people. It's something that I've been trying to work on, and so that there's a lot that I feel like there's this gap between true relationship, long-term relationship, and what I want as a person. And there's no way that I can ask someone to tell me what they want or what they think of me without it coming across strange. And so that's something I'm dancing with at the moment. I'm trying to figure out how to manage that. So yeah, it's hard to describe. I don't know if I could say I recommend writing a poem about your depression while you're depressed, because it's very dangerous, to say the least, when you can fall in love with your own suffering, and then when the idea of hope comes your way and you can reject it, you can refuse. There were often times that the concept of getting out of the darkness, actually being free, was debilitating. I don't know what me strong looks like, so I do know what me broken and disheveled and untrustworthy and dark and glim and hopeless looks like. And so, although all of those things are terrible, they are things that I know. And I don't want to believe that there could be a me that's better. Something along those lines, even though I knew I never fully meant that, because there was always that whisper of light out there somewhere, just calling for knowing that at any moment I could change my path. Not necessarily know how, but the capacity to do so was always there. And so, as much as it was medicine to me to express these words and get it out, getting it out also has its downsides, because you can pathologize and you can dance with the devil in those moments. And dancing with the devil might be better than sitting alone and doing nothing, but dancing with the devil also means that you're dancing with the devil. You are playing with darkness and making light of it with music and going in step to it. So that is a dangerous aspect to it. So that's I actually have some things to write about. That's very interesting to notice that about the degree to which I may need or desire affirmation. I know words of affirmation is a love language of mine, so I guess it makes sense. But I hope this was useful. I will see you next week, and for those that listened, thank you.